and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, District 5810. I'm Greg Tepper. Sitting across the table from me is the man they call Josey, Andrew Utz. Hi, Josey.
Hey, Greg.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. This is... I don't know what episode number this is going to be. Are you a big milestones guy? Like, are you a big, like, if we... Like, when we get to... Let's just say we get to a 50th episode.
Oh, wow.
Like, this is not the 50th episode. I want to be very clear. We are far from that.
Yeah.
But, like, if we get to 50, is that, like, more meaningful to you than 49 or 51?
I think so. For, like, an arbitrary... Yeah. We did it. We recorded a free podcast and put it on iTunes.
I've been running lately on purpose.
Oh, my. Not from anything?
Can't recommend it. But I've been running, and I recently... hit like I have two parts of my brain. One is my like lizard brain, and one is my like galaxy brain.
Okay. And
my galaxy brain knows that round numbers that end in fives and zeros are just numbers. They have no special meaning or anything like that. But like the other day, I ran like an even amount of miles, and my lizard brain kicked in. It's like, that's a big deal. It's like maybe I was just exhausted from running, but like my lizard brain wanted to celebrate.
More delirious.
Like, yes, that's right. Anyway, this is the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810. Perhaps you run to this podcast, and if you do, stop. Running is not fun. You know who runs a lot? A former guest of this podcast, Becca Egger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Like a lot. And just like on purpose.
Yeah.
I can't. On one hand, I'm doing it, and on the other hand, I can't recommend it. Like, I just can't.
It's
bad.
I just real quick ran the Texas Bridge series. More on that, probably an eventual podcast, but kind of just to do it. My older sister got me into it, and it's like 2 10Ks and a half marathon. Don't.
That's too much running.
Yeah, it really was. And my lizard brain didn't like warn me.
You know what's funny? Someone is definitely running listening to this right now, and they're like, maybe I should stop. No, finish your route.
Keep going.
But then consider it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying. Coming up on today's episode, we have an enlightening conversation, a wonderful conversation with legitimately, I mean this very sincerely, one of my very favorite people, Mackenzie Duncan.
Yes, Duncan.
Duncan. Formerly Mackenzie Wilson. But we talked with Mackenzie at camp, had a great conversation with her, and so we will hear from her coming up here in just a little bit. But first, as we are wont to do, we handed the planning reins of this podcast over to our guest. Why did we do that? Like, I've started to wonder why we came up with this format of a podcast anyway, where we just let the guest dictate what we talk about. Do you realize what a bad idea that is?
See, what's crazy is we pivoted to this idea from the beginning.
We did the first 4 episodes, and then somebody, I don't even remember who it was, somebody suggested, like, you should do a theme. And I was like, we should do a theme! And I never thought anything else. It's a lizard brain. Just coming at it. Lizard brain yells is what I'm telling you. But we asked Mackenzie to choose a word, a phrase, if you will, off of a big list of phrases. And she chose problem solving. Problem solving.
Good buzzword.
Very good buzzword. I guess you're an engineer, so you kind of got to be a math guy.
Yeah, there's calculators and stuff, too. Sorry to pull back the curtain on that.
Wait, you use calculators?
Oh,
It's not all mental math?
No.
Well, that really shatters my... Like, I think I respect my little brother less now, because he's an engineer. Anyway... problem solving. I've got the big segment. I've got the big boy segment. Problem solving is, I think, one of those things that's kind of self-evident in leadership. I think that it's the purpose of having leadership skills is to solve problems. And so in some respects, saying problem solving as a skill is like saying, okay, so just leadership then? That's what you're driving at? It's one of those, it's like communication, right? It's like, yeah, that's like the big part. It's like saying, I can't even think of a good metaphor for that. But the point is that it's so self-evident of what it's like. It's the very core of what leadership is. But I think that there's a lot of different tentacles to come off of problem solving. And so I was trying to look up a couple of different things in there. One of them I found is a gentleman named Scott Cochrane. It's probably Cochrane, but it's got an E on the end of it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's got to be Cochrane. He is there's some sort of organization called Willow Creek Association. No idea what that is. Not even going to look. You guys look it up. Perhaps it's just some sort of terrible organization that I'm hyping up. But anyway, he has a story or a blog post up on his site about how leaders solve the biggest problem-solving problem. And the biggest I think that he kind of puts it well. Is like problem solving is the DNA of effective leadership, right? It's like, what is a person, right? The person is, yes, it's a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways to describe it, but one thing you could say is like it's the DNA. That's the core of what you are. Problem solving is kind of like that. And so the biggest problem with problem solving is how do you get better at the thing you're supposed to already be good at? Do you know what I mean? Like if you're a leader. If you're a leader, I think that it's kind of like there's an assumption that you're going to be good at problem solving. Well, but obviously we all need to improve those things. And he has three small clarifying questions that I think, one of the things is understanding what the problem is. If we're going to solve it, we've got to understand what the problem is. And he's got 3 ways to clarify it. The first is this a problem to be solved or a tension to be managed?
Oh.
Okay. Let me tell you something about being married. Okay. I'm sure you run into this because you and I are wired pretty similarly. Let's say your lovely wife comes home. And she's had a rough day at work. She's got this and that, and she wants to vent, and she's venting to you about work. I am the kind of guy that I'm like, okay, let's find a solution to this. We have to find the answer to this problem. When really, she's looking at me like a dum-dum, saying, no, I just want to vent to you. This is more of a tension to be managed.
Yes.
And so, it may be that there's not every difficult situation that lands where you are is going to be something you're going to be able to solve, or that it's your responsibility to solve, which kind of leads you to number 2, which is it my problem? Because And there is a notion that if you are a leader and it's in your jurisdiction, then it has to be your problem. And I understand where people are coming from with that, but I also disagree with it, that sometimes it is a problem that is above your pay grade. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is a problem that can be handled by somebody else. But in the end, if the crisis is really a problem, then you got to find out who the best person to handle it is. And maybe it is you, but it's also possible that it's not. And you may be tackling a problem that just isn't yours. It doesn't belong to you. And finally, just how big is the problem? And I think that kind of gets to urgency. That kind of gets to, is this something we need to tackle right now? Is this something that we can put off? Is this something that we have time to figure out? Or is this something that needs a snap decision? You should figure out the scale and the scope of the problem, and then you can better determine how much energy and resources you need to put towards solving it. But there was another thing. As I was reading that, I'm like, okay, well, that's nice. I could just do that. Could be a big segment for the problem-solving podcast. That'll be all good. But I found something else. I'm going to try to pronounce a word that is very difficult to pronounce.
It's a safe zone.
Oh, my God. Oh, my gosh. Iatrogenic. Noun. Not sure. Adjective. Actually, can I get the dumb computer to pronounce word?
Oh, yeah.
Online. Let's do this. Let me see if I can do this. No. Come on, thing. I'm trying to. You're listening to live coverage of me doing this. There we go.
Technology, solving problems.
Yes, we're doing great. Listen to live coverage of me trying to figure out how to work this thing. Okay, let's see if I can turn this up and bring the thing to it. Okay.
Iatrogenic.
Did you hear that? Oh. I'm going to bring this down here.
I was like, yeah,
such
I
a bad
heard
idea.
it, but
Iatrogenic.
Iatrogenic. Let's try again.
Iatrogenic.
Iatrogenic. Okay. Do you know what that word means?
I do not.
Iatrogenic or iatrogenic, is relating to an illness caused by medical examination or treatment. What that means is that is an illness that getting health care caused you. Okay?
Okay.
Here's what I'm getting at. I think that there are some instances in which problem solving and trying to solve it makes the problem worse. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And at least going about it in the incorrect way can make a situation worse than it otherwise would have been. And so, one of the things that I read, and I lost the link so I can't find it, but the idea being, are you attacking this problem in the way that you should be attacking it, or are you actually making it worse? And I think that by kind of asking those clarifying questions of just saying, is this a problem that needs to be solved? Is it your problem? And just how big is it? You can come up with a strategy to effectively deal with it. And I think if you skip over those steps and you just say, we're going to go full force into solving this problem and not going about it in the way that you should, I think you can cause iatrogenic problems in the sense that you're only, like, by going and trying to solve something, you're only making it worse. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
That made a lot. That hit me in a weird way. I was like, oh yeah, like I can definitely relate to that. Of like, making a mistake because you didn't think things through, or exacerbating a problem. There's a big boy word. Exacerbating a problem without by not going about it in the right way. So that's something for that I was thinking about as far as problem solving is concerned, because it's hard to talk about because it is so ingrained in just the DNA of what leadership actually is. In any case, that's what I came up with.
Well, that was really good. It was a nice...
do you mean that?
I really do.
Okay.
Because
you're looking at me and you're giving me the throat slash thing of like, stop talking.
I'm looking at you and I'm like, I come across a lot of big words that I'm just like, that's a big word. I'll just go back
iatrogenic.
Later. And you like looked it up and you're like, yes, this is it.
I did.
So thank you.
Iatrogenesis is the effect on a person. Anyway, sorry. That's it. Okay, enough of my nonsense. Let's get to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. Here's our conversation with Mackenzie Duncan coming up next on the RYLACast.
Oh, Josey.
Oh, Greg.
Once again, we find ourselves here at Camp Hobbitzell in scenic, crime-free Midlothian, Texas.
Roadshow.
Playing a road game. And for good reason. Because we have a world traveler on our hands.
We do. Recently.
Somebody who I think 48 hours ago was not on the continent.
I believe you're correct.
I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say it confidently so that people believe me.
Oh, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for America's sweetheart. We are joined by Mackenzie Duncan. Yay!
Thanks, guys.
I know you're really excited to do this podcast. You've been clamoring to be on this podcast for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm joking because she is... she's glaring at me right now.
Seething.
So, Mackenzie, how's the week going so far?
It's going good. It's been a good start to our week at RYLA. We still got a lot left, a lot to do. Tonight we've got some big emotional barriers to break through, which is pretty awesome. So most of it's yet to come.
Some personal developing. So what do you do? I guess before I ask the second question, what do you do outside of the road show at Camp RYLA?
I thought you were saying the road show of my life.
So actually, boy,
I mean, I am on the road a lot. That's accurate. My job's kind of hard to describe. When I'm telling the short of it, I say that I teach camping. Going into a little bit more detail, my official title is the Assistant Director of Experiential Education. And so I'm focusing on how do we learn through doing, and how do we help kids get out and do more things that don't involve screens, that don't involve a lot of thumb exercises, and really getting out and spending time in the world.
So then let's back up and let's go to the beginning of your RYLA story. Tell us your RYLA story.
Okay. Camper in 2012. After...
Man, dude, I'm so old.
You really are. Well, wait. We are.
We are. Go on. Sorry,
continue.
You're good. Knew about RYLA, knew a lot about the story because my older brother had been here as a camper, had been here on crew, working hard every summer. Dad was here, super involved, loving every moment of it, and so they were really excited for me to be here, and I had visited a couple years before on Olympics Day and got to see a little bit of the shenanigans. As far as RYLA's story goes, I fell in love with RYLA pretty quick.
Did it click when, if you can remember, when did because I feel like it clicks for different people at different times. Some people have to leave camp before it clicks. Yeah. Can you pinpoint a time when you were like, oh, okay, I get it. These are my people?
I think I was just so already primed for it because I had already met so many of the awesome people here and had already kind of been brainwashed a little bit that this was going to be the best place ever, that I think I came into it with none of the kind of baggage, nothing kind of keeping me from just loving every second of it and finding a home here pretty quick.
So, you mentioned that you teach camping, and RYLA is a camp. So, how do you... It is true.
Is that what the camp before means?
Well, we'll get to Greg. Yes. Yeah, we'll get to Greg in a minute. So
Mackenzie is rolling your eyes for the radio audience.
So how do you use tools that you learned at RYLA in your everyday life and job?
Absolutely. When I was first graduating college and looking for a job and trying to come up with what it was that I was passionate about and what it was that I wanted to do, I actually turned to my dad and said, if I could get paid to do RYLA, I would love to do that every day for the rest of my life. And happened upon a job where I get to do soft skills development. I get to play games and run activities with students and work on leadership development with students every day in my school. And so I think the parallels between the two are so many that it's almost hard to identify what it is.
On the radio.
Later that same evening.
And we're back with Mackenzie Duncan after I got legitimately called on the radio during the podcast interview. So thank you for bearing with me.
Always for toilet things. Every radio call I hear is for bathroom issues.
What? I'm really glad you brought that up because there's nothing I like more than talking about fixing people's toilet problems here at camp. Okay, so Josey has actually run off, and I'm going to do the remainder of the podcast with you. And so we were talking a little bit about your RYLA experience, and obviously you are kind of, I don't know how to put this, you have a family legacy here, right? You have a legacy here.
I do.
Do you feel like... Do you feel like RYLA? You've made RYLA your own. You know what I mean? That's kind of a hard question to answer but you were brought in because your brother came here. Obviously, your upstanding father Ken is very much involved. But do you feel like this is like you have been able to carve out your own place at camp too?
I certainly like to think so. Yeah. It helps that while my brother was here, and there's still plenty of people here who love him and know him and how awesome he is, he actually was deployed when I was a camper and hasn't been back full-time on staff since. And so that's actually, not to be selfish, but has given me some room to really have my own space in camp and really get to know and meet a whole bunch of people. So I think so. I think that there's been a lot of space for that. My dad and I have always had a really close relationship, and we've always been able to kind of coexist in the same place and have enough time to spend some time together, but also enough time to have our own separate identities as well.
You are also one of, how many RYLA marriages are there now? A handful. They're a handful, but you are
Indeed.
You're one of them.
Indeed.
You married Keegan Duncan. First and foremost, have you gotten used to people calling you Mackenzie Duncan?
So camp is actually the first place where I have been using my married last name because I've been traveling all summer and had to use my passport.
Oh, that's right.
So I have not gone through the whole legal process yet. So as far as everyone else is concerned, I'm still Wilson, yet to be changed.
So then, if I, because I have definitely called you Mackenzie Wilson a couple of times,
Absolutely.
like to your face, and didn't like you slap me for some reason. I don't get it. You don't take offense to that?
Not at all. I mean, being a teacher, being in a school where kids have known me for quite a few years as a Wilson, I've just kind of accepted that it's going to be a long time before there's ever a full transition there, because it's hard for people to adjust to a change like that.
How is married life?
It is good. The pause is I've been traveling so much I haven't been home.
I guess that's worth getting into because we mentioned off the top that you had just gotten back. You literally arrived. We're recording this on Monday of camp. You arrived Saturday evening, basically. Saturday, afternoon? Is that right?
About 4.
About 4. And where were you and what were you doing?
I flew in from Munich, but we had been spending 2 weeks based in Austria hiking the Alps, which is really awesome.
Yeah? Would you recommend it to our podcast listeners?
I would highly recommend it. Austria has a set of huts that you can buy all your food, they give you a nice warm place to stay, all of that great stuff, and we were able to spend 6 days backpacking from hut to hut, which was really cool, and we didn't have to carry tents or sleeping bags, which is always a plus.
Man, that is wild. Okay, so as always, we ask people to choose their own adventure on this podcast, which I understand you said that you listened to on the plane while you were away.
I did.
Okay.
Correct.
That makes me feel very good. So we have an international audience now. We can claim this is internationally acclaimed.
Not sure if that counts.
Let me have this, Mackenzie. Okay. But you chose, we gave you a list of words to choose one, to choose that really resonated with you. Yours was, you chose problem solving.
I did.
Why?
I think that problem solving is the best descriptor for experiential learning to me. It's all about how you're solving problems, what are you learning from solving problems, how does your point of view change, all of those kind of things that happen only when there is a problem, when there is something to step through, to be challenged by, stuff like that. So I think that really illustrates a lot of what I do, what I'm passionate about, and something that I think is really, really central to growth in general, and specifically to what we do here at RYLA.
At the end of every podcast, we like to give our guests an opportunity to plug something that you're passionate about. It can be a great book you read, it can be a TV show you're into, it can be a thing that you've done that you think everybody else should do, it can be a food, it can be whatever you'd like. The floor is yours to promote something that you think is people listening to this podcast should know about. As you can tell, we don't. As you can tell, we do not give the guests the questions ahead of time.
No, didn't give me any time. Well, I guess book that I'm reading right now. I'm reading Push by Tommy Caldwell. I highly recommend. I don't know how many people know much about the rock climbing world, but he is not only a phenom who has done incredible things that the mere mortal cannot imagine, but he's also done so while really being an outstanding person and bringing a lot of value. And the book is really cool because he takes a really honest approach to talking about what his life has been like. I mean, the life even of a famous climber is not a pretty one. They call them dirtbaggers for a reason. But it's a really cool look at how you can push yourself to the limits and really achieve some really cool things just by, again, that problem-solving idea that you see something, and if you have that desire to be able to push past it, that you can do some really, really cool things.
We've reached the end of the podcast. Was this as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Horrible.
Ladies and
Just
gentlemen,
kidding.
Give it up for Mackenzie Duncan. Yay!
And our thanks once again to Mackenzie Duncan for letting us pull her away from something no doubt very important that she was doing at camp.
Yes.
To chat with us jokers. Appreciate her time. And another member of your RYLA marriage fraternity.
That's right. We grow larger by the year.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. I'll never be part of that. Well, I mean, maybe. Well, never say never. My wife might get real sick of me real quick. In any case, thanks to Mackenzie for hopping on with us.
Positive thoughts.
And now, with something to leave you with, we go to Chief Correspondent Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. Something to leave you with. You said something in a previous podcast about reading books.
Oh, did I?
And I've become public transit guy. And
you told me this.
Well, yeah, so I've pivoted and I've morphed as public transit guy.
You've both pivoted and morphed.
I now
great.
I'm book guy on the train. Ooh. I bring hardcover book.
Hardcover book.
Sorry, physical book. Sometimes a hardcover, sometimes a paperback. And problem solving, like you said earlier, it's that weird, like you should know what it is kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like you're a leader, dummy. That's the whole gig.
Yeah,
and
in the spirit of using large words in my big dumb dense brain, the book is called "But What If We're Wrong" by Chuck Klosterman.
Mm-hmm. I've actually read this book.
You have?
I have.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested, maybe not now, but I don't know if we have enough time to get your thoughts on the book.
Welcome to the RYLACast Book Club.
And I'm a little bit more than halfway through the book, but the basic premise is kind of rethinking or taking a look back, imagining we're 400 or 500 years in the future and looking back on now, and how are we going to view now as we view 400 or 500 years in the past. Mm-hmm. And I relate that to problem solving because it brings up a lot of questions. It questions things that we take for granted. And one of those things is like gravity, for example. So, I know you mentioned that problem solving, don't try to, solve something that's not your responsibility. But at the same time, as a leader, I don't think you should be afraid to question something that's always been just assumed to be correct. The whole "we've always done it this way" kind of thing. There's multiple ways to attack a problem. And so this whole problem solving thing, I really like the book, and I say my big dumb dense brain because I've got the book in my lap, and I also have my phone looking up words that Chuck Klosterman uses throughout the book.
Yeah. That is... It's a really interesting book, and he kind of has like an overarching theory, if I remember correctly, about it, that like fundamentally... here we go. He has a whole thing called Klosterman's razor. If you've heard of Occam's razor, Occam's razor is the theory that all else being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. The Klosterman's razor is the best hypothesis is the one that reflexively accepts its potential wrongness to begin with, and he does a great job of kind of breaking down. Kind of over the course of history, it's like what people 100 years ago definitely knew to be true. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this is definitely the way things are, and now like we think are nuts. And it's not just like fads; it's also just like fundamental things about humanity and time and science that we know to be true now. It is a really interesting book, so I will second your recommendation.
Well, good. Well, thank you. So yeah, I know that's kind of a weird way to go about problem solving, but. That is my. But
I think it comes back to humility, right? Mm-hmm. It comes back to understanding that, like, even though you're in charge, and even though your job is maybe to help find a solution to whatever problem we're dealing with, that doesn't mean you're always right. And accepting that there's a fair chance you're wrong, but you're doing the best with what you can, I think is an intellectually honest and what's the word? What's like the noun version or the adjective version of integrity?
Oh,
integral?
Man.
Whatever you mean. It's a way of going about things with integrity is what I'm saying. So, I like that. Good job, Josey.
Well, thanks, Greg.
That is going to do it for this episode of the RYLACast. A very special thanks once again to our special guest, Mackenzie Duncan, for joining us. Please tell your friends. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast and tell your friends. And here with an antiquated way to tell your friends how to listen to this podcast is Josey. I am speaking slowly because he's just now thinking of one, and he nodded.
Yes. So go ahead and write it on a little piece of paper, stick it on a piece of tape underneath your desk in homeroom so that someone else, when you change desks, will look under there and find it.
Homeroom.
Homeroom. Or just do it at your office and then force everyone to change cubicles.
Yeah, and then when you get fired.
Or find another better job.
Yes. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. And Josey, thanks for your courage.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll see you next time on the RYLACast.